It was a cold, misty night, the kind that seemed to seep into your bones. Oliver hadn't expected much from his hiking trip, just a quiet break from city life. But as he made his way through the dense forest, he noticed an unusual glow pulsing from between the trees. Oliver had always been a grounded guy, a skilled engineer who didn't believe in the paranormal. But this light, pale blue and shifting like the waves of a distant ocean, called to him, compelling him to draw closer. As he stepped cautiously towards the light, he noticed that the forest seemed to hush, as if it too was waiting to see what would happen next. Standing by a large tree, Oliver finally saw her. At first glance, she appeared almost human. A young woman with delicate otherworldly features. Her skin held an ethereal glow that seemed to pulse faintly under the moonlight. Her eyes, impossibly large and deeply blue, were locked on his, as if she had been waiting for him. Oliver's instinct was to back away, but something about her presence held him there. She looked vulnerable, curious, and yet slightly afraid, much like he was. Before he could gather his thoughts, a soft, echoing voice entered his mind. "Can you help me?" she asked, her voice both audible and seemingly projected into his very mind. Taken aback, Oliver hesitated. "Help you? Who? What are you?" Her head tilted slightly, and her lips curled into the faintest of smiles. "I am Kayla. I am, not from here." Her gaze softened, as if trying to understand him on a level beyond words. "But I've traveled far to find out what it means to feel, as humans do." Oliver felt a chill down his spine. He had always thought of emotions as abstract things, impossible to describe, and yet here was someone, a being from another world, asking him to show her the essence of what made him human. He looked around, half expecting to wake from a strange dream, but Kayla's presence remained, real and persistent. He took a cautious step toward her. "Why do you want to know how humans feel?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Her gaze remained steady, and for a moment, he saw a flicker of vulnerability. "My people have lost something. We do not feel as you do. We know only knowledge, purpose, but we believe that understanding your kind may give us back what we have forgotten." A long pause hung between them as Oliver absorbed her words. He could sense an intensity within her, a longing that reminded him of his own restless search for meaning. Perhaps like him, she was on a journey she hadn't fully chosen. "All right," he said finally, his voice resolute. "But you have to understand, emotions aren't something you can learn overnight. They take time to feel, to understand." Kayla nodded, a glimmer of relief crossing her features. "I am ready to try. As much as it takes." Oliver took a deep breath, trying to steady himself in the presence of Kayla, this strange, otherworldly being who seemed both curious and lost. Standing there in the dim glow of the moonlight, he felt a mixture of wonder and responsibility. Kayla wasn't human, but her gaze held a flicker of something recognizable, an openness, a vulnerability that stirred something within him. "All right, Kayla," he said, stepping closer. "If you're really here to learn about being human, we'll start with something simple." She nodded, her gaze unblinking, awaiting his guidance. He led her over to a fallen tree, where they could sit and speak more comfortably, though he still felt a persistent sense of disbelief at the situation. As they settled on the moss-covered log, the forest was silent around them, as if the world itself was pausing to observe this unexpected meeting. "Let's start with joy," Oliver said. He realized how strange it sounded to try and explain emotions to someone who had never felt them before. Joy is like warmth. It's what you feel when something good happens, when you accomplish something, or you're with people you care about. Kayla's brow furrowed slightly. "Warmth?" she asked, sounding curious but uncertain. "We know warmth in our world, but it is physical, a sensation." Oliver shook his head, smiling a little. "This is different. It's a feeling inside you, not something you can measure or hold. Joy can come from little things too, like a sunrise or a good meal. It's like a spark of light, a kind of energy. For a long moment, Kayla simply looked at him, as though trying to capture every nuance of his expression and tone. Then she lifted her gaze to the sky, where the first hints of dawn were beginning to brush the horizon in soft pinks and oranges. "This is beautiful," she murmured, almost to herself. "The colors, so vivid." She turned back to Oliver, her face open and filled with wonder. "Is this beauty part of joy?" Oliver smiled, struck by the innocence in her question. "Yes," he replied gently. "That's a part of it. Beauty, when you notice it, brings joy. It's those little moments that make us feel more alive." Kayla continued watching the sunrise, her expression softening as if some part of her was reaching for that feeling. After a few silent minutes, she turned to him again, her eyes searching. "And sadness?" she asked. "I sense it within you, Oliver. The heaviness. Is that part of being human too?" He swallowed, feeling an unexpected knot tighten in his throat. He hadn't planned to share his grief with her, this alien girl who barely understood what it meant to feel, but something in her gaze made it impossible to hide. "Yes," he said quietly. "Sadness is also part of us. It's what we feel when we lose someone or something important. It's a weight that lingers." Kayla's expression shifted, and she placed a hand gently on her own chest, as if trying to feel the ache he described. "How do you live with it?" "That's the hard part," Oliver replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes you just carry it, but over time, it can fade, even if it never really goes away." He looked away, his mind returning to memories he had long kept buried. There was a deep silence between them then, a shared understanding that stretched across their differences. Finally, Kayla spoke again, her voice soft but resolute. "Thank you, Oliver," she said, "for sharing what is precious to you. I feel connected to it, as if it gives me a glimpse into what I am searching for." He glanced at her, surprised. Despite her otherworldly appearance, there was something almost painfully familiar in her expression. An ache, a need for connection. It reminded him of his own quiet longing for understanding, for companionship. Somehow, in this alien girl, he had found a kindred spirit. "Maybe we're not so different after all," he said softly. "We're both searching in our own ways." Kayla smiled, a fragile expression that seemed to hold both hope and uncertainty. "Yes," she murmured. "Perhaps that's why I was drawn to you. I feel that we are bound by this desire to understand." As dawn fully broke over the horizon, painting the forest in shades of gold and green, Oliver felt a strange sense of peace settle over him. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew that whatever came next, he wasn't alone in it anymore. For the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of purpose stirring within him, a reason to move forward, to keep exploring, if only to help Kayla find what she was looking for. And in that quiet moment, under the rising sun, they sat side by side, two beings from different worlds, bound by an invisible thread of understanding and wonder. In the coming days, he would teach her more about human emotions, guiding her through the maze of joy, sorrow, fear, and hope. Little did he know that their journey would lead them far beyond the boundaries of the forest, into realms of mystery and discovery that neither of them could have anticipated. The days that followed were like nothing Oliver had ever experienced. Each morning, he and Kayla met by the forest edge, away from prying eyes, where he tried to teach her the intricacies of being human. At first, he struggled to find words for things that he had always taken for granted, like laughter, anxiety, and love. Emotions weren't formulas or data he could easily explain. Yet each time he struggled, Kayla met him with patient curiosity, absorbing his words with an intensity that made him want to keep trying. One afternoon, he decided to introduce her to laughter. The sky was clear, the sun filtering through the branches as they sat by the riverbank, watching the gentle flow of water. "Laughter is like joy, but it's more than that," Oliver said, thinking out loud. It's a sudden feeling that bubbles up when you hear something funny or feel unexpectedly happy. Kayla tilted her head. I have seen humans do this. Laugh. They show their teeth and make loud sounds. But why? He chuckled at her precise description. I suppose it's a release of happiness, sometimes even of nervousness. It can be spontaneous or even uncontrollable. But it makes you feel good, like a weightlifting. To help her understand, he told her a story from his childhood about how he tried to impress a girl by jumping from a swing, only to fall flat on his face. He felt silly telling it, but as he described the absurdity of his younger self, he found himself laughing at the memory. He glanced at Kayla, hoping to see a spark of amusement. Instead, she sat in deep concentration, studying his expression. You fell. That seems painful. He laughed even harder, realizing how strange it must sound without the context of humor. It was painful, but looking back, it was also funny because it was so unexpected. Laughter is a way of accepting the things that go wrong sometimes, and just enjoying the moment. She watched him thoughtfully, her gaze softening. So, humans can find joy, even in discomfort. Yeah, he replied, nodding. I guess laughter is our way of turning mistakes or pain into something lighter. It's how we cope with life. Kayla's eyes held a flicker of understanding. I would like to experience this feeling. To feel lighter. Their laughter lesson continued for hours. Oliver told more stories, describing moments of awkwardness, absurdity, and silliness, until finally, Kayla managed a small laugh, an uncertain, airy sound that startled them both. They looked at each other in surprise, and Oliver saw the faintest glimmer of joy in her gaze. That was a laugh, wasn't it? She asked, her voice filled with wonder. Yes, he replied, grinning. A real laugh. Kayla smiled, still tentative but genuine. It felt strange, but pleasant, too. Their lessons didn't stop there. Over the following days, Oliver introduced her to other emotions, bringing her through moments of fear, wonder, and peace. He took her to a quiet part of the forest one evening to watch the stars. As they lay on the cool grass, he pointed out constellations, telling her stories of myths and heroes that had fascinated him as a boy. Why do you humans look to the stars? She asked, her voice almost a whisper as they stared at the vastness above them. We look to them because they remind us that there's more out there than just us, he replied, thinking aloud. They make us feel small, but also connected to something bigger. It's comforting. Somehow. She gazed up, her expression pensive. In my world, we look to the stars too. But it is to understand them, to study their movements. We have lost the sense of wonder. He glanced at her, feeling an ache of empathy. Wonder keeps us curious. It's what drives us to search for meaning, to keep looking for answers even when we know we might not find them. For a long time, they lay in silence, staring at the stars as if they held all the answers they both sought. And Oliver realized that in his attempts to teach Kayla, he was learning too, rediscovering the depth of his own humanity and the simple beauty of emotions he'd once taken for granted. As days turned to weeks, Kayla grew closer to understanding what it meant to feel, and Oliver found himself dreading the thought of her leaving. She was no longer just a stranger or a mystery to him. She had become a part of his life, someone he could share his thoughts and dreams with. But as autumn crept into the forest, he knew their time together was running short. Kayla had told him that her people were coming for her soon. Her mission was to study and return with what she had learned, though she had never told him what would happen next or if she could come back. One evening, with the air thick with the scent of fallen leaves, she turned to him with a somber look. Oliver, she began softly, my time here is almost over. My people will come for me soon. He felt a pang in his chest, a sadness he hadn't anticipated. So, this is goodbye then. She reached out, her hand resting lightly on his. Yes, she whispered, her voice laced with regret. But you have given me more than I could have hoped for. I will carry these feelings with me, and perhaps share them with others." They sat in silence, their hands entwined, both knowing this moment was all they had left. And though he wanted to say so much more, to ask her to stay, he knew that this part of her journey was hers alone. As she rose to leave, Oliver looked into her eyes, searching for the right words. "Kayla, thank you. You've reminded me of things I thought I'd lost. I'll never forget you." She smiled, a bittersweet expression that spoke of both gratitude and sadness. "Nor I you." Then, like a wisp of light, she stepped into the shadows of the forest, leaving him alone beneath the stars. And though his heart ached, Oliver knew he would always carry her memory, just as Kayla would carry with her the first traces of what it meant to be human. Days passed since Kayla's departure, but the memory of her lingered like a haunting melody. Oliver went through the motions of his life, yet everything felt subtly different, like he was seeing the world through a new lens. Simple things, like the laughter of strangers or the rustling of leaves, reminded him of the lessons they had shared. He would catch himself gazing at the stars, wondering if she was out there somewhere, remembering him too. One evening, while tidying his small cabin, he found the note. A strange mix of emotions bubbled within him: pride, sorrow, and an inexplicable yearning to see her again. He couldn't quite let go. As weeks turned into months, Oliver resumed his work and routines. He even started hiking regularly again, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he might stumble upon another faint blue light pulsing in the darkness. But the forest remained still, and he felt the absence of her presence, a silence as deep as the winter snow that began to blanket the land. Then, one cold, clear night, something unusual happened. Oliver was returning from a late evening walk when he saw a flash of light in the sky. A single streak, so fast and silent he thought he might have imagined it. But as he stared, another one followed, and then another, until the sky was filled with meteor showers, brilliant and mesmerizing. His heart raced as he watched, feeling that inexplicable wonder Kayla had so longed to understand. And then, as the last meteor flickered across the sky, he felt a whisper in his mind, faint, delicate, but unmistakably her voice. "Thank you, Oliver." He froze, his breath catching. The words were like a breeze across his thoughts, barely there but undeniable. He knew that it was her, reaching across whatever vast distance now separated them. She was letting him know she was safe, that she remembered. In that moment, he felt a strange peace, a warmth that settled in his chest. She had taken a piece of him with her, just as she had left a piece of herself behind. He knew he would likely never see her again, but the lessons, the memories, the feelings, they would remain, shaping him in ways he could not yet understand. As he stood under the silent stars, Oliver smiled, a quiet, grateful smile. He knew that in some far-off world, Kayla was teaching her people the wonders of human emotions, the laughter, the fear, the wonder of simply being alive. And maybe, just maybe, a part of her would always carry the memory of a quiet engineer who had once shown her what it meant to feel. With a final glance at the stars, Oliver turned back toward his cabin, ready to continue his journey with a heart a little fuller and a spirit a little lighter. Months had passed, and Oliver's life had fallen into a familiar rhythm, but he never forgot Kayla. The memories of their time together, though brief, felt etched into his very being. Sometimes he would walk through the forest, as if hoping that by retracing his steps, he might glimpse that faint blue glow once more. One autumn evening, he decided to hike up to the ridge overlooking the valley. The sky was an explosion of warm colors, fiery reds, oranges, and purples blending into the approaching twilight. As he reached the ridge, he noticed something strange. A light shimmering faintly in the trees below. Familiar yet softer than he remembered. His heart raced, and he couldn't shake the feeling that she might be here, waiting. Descending through the forest, he carefully approached the glow. His mind raced, filled with excitement and caution, half worried that this light would vanish like a mirage. But as he rounded the last tree, there she was, Kayla, standing under the canopy of leaves, her skin glowing with that otherworldly light. She looked almost the same, though there was a new radiance to her, a warmth that seemed to fill the space around her. Their eyes met, and 1,000 unspoken emotions seemed to pass between them. She smiled, and in that moment, all his questions, all his doubts, faded into the background. "You came back," Oliver whispered, his voice filled with awe and relief. Kayla nodded, stepping closer. "I had to see you again. There was so much I didn't understand before. But now, I wanted to thank you, Oliver. You taught me what it means to be truly alive." Oliver felt a surge of emotion he couldn't quite name. Joy, relief, and something deeper, something that had been missing since she'd left. "Kayla, I didn't expect to see you again. I thought it was goodbye." "I thought so too," she replied softly, her gaze unwavering. "But the memories I carry, the things I learned with you, they became a part of me. And I needed to come back, even if only for a short time." They stood in silence, each searching the other's face for words left unsaid. Finally, Oliver found his voice. "What was it like, sharing what you learned? Did they understand?" Kayla's face grew somber. "Not all of them. Some could not understand why I would want to feel such things, why I would seek to understand humans. But there were others who listened. They saw my memories, and they began to see value in what I learned. They are curious now, willing to explore emotions themselves." Oliver nodded, feeling a strange pride. "I'm glad. I never thought a simple engineer could teach anyone something so profound." "It wasn't just you," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "It was everything you shared with me. The laughter, the stories, the quiet moments of just being. Those are the things that have the power to change us." A comfortable silence settled between them, filled with the rustling leaves and the distant call of an owl. Kayla glanced up at the sky, her face thoughtful. "I don't know when I'll return again, or if I ever will," she admitted, her tone bittersweet. "My journey is still unfolding, and there is so much more for me to discover. But I wanted to give you something to remember." Oliver's eyes widened as she reached out her hand, revealing a small luminescent stone. It glowed faintly in her palm, pulsing in a rhythm that matched her own light. He took it carefully, feeling its warmth seep into his skin. "This will fade in time, but for now, it holds a part of me," she explained. "When you look at it, you'll know that I am out there, somewhere, carrying our memories with me." Oliver swallowed, his throat tight. "Thank you, Kayla. I'll cherish it." She gave a small nod, her gaze softening. "And I'll carry a part of you too. No matter where I go, a part of me will remember what it's like to feel alive." With a final, lingering look, Kayla took a step back, her form beginning to shimmer and blur. Oliver's heart ached as he realized this might truly be their last goodbye, but he knew he had to let her go. This was her journey, just as it had been his to guide her. "Goodbye, Kayla," he whispered. "Goodbye, Oliver," her voice echoed in his mind, warm and filled with gratitude. And then, like a breath of wind, she was gone, leaving him alone in the clearing under the canopy of stars. He looked down at the small stone in his hand, its glow gentle and steady. He knew, deep in his heart, that her presence would linger with him, a quiet, enduring memory of a love that transcended worlds. Oliver stayed there a while, looking up at the stars, feeling a quiet peace settle within him. He knew his life would go on, and he would carry the memory of Kayla wherever he went. But he also knew he would never truly be alone. In the vastness of the universe, their paths had crossed, two souls finding meaning in each other. And that, he thought, was enough. Years passed, and Oliver's life carried him through moments of joy, struggle, and growth. He eventually married, built a family, and continued his work as an engineer, yet he never let go of the small stone Kayla had left him. Its glow had faded over time, but it remained a symbol of the night that changed his life, a connection to something greater than himself. In quiet moments, he would hold the stone, feeling the warmth of the memories it contained. He would tell his children stories, ones that only hinted at the real encounter, wrapped in mystery and wonder. He spoke of a being who taught him that life was more than knowledge and purpose, that there was power in emotions, in connections, in the very fabric of being human. As the years turned into decades, the stories became part of his family's lore. His children and grandchildren listened with wide eyes, captivated by the tale of the strange woman from another world. Though they saw it as a bedtime story, they sensed the truth in his voice, the depth of emotion that lingered in his words. One late autumn evening, as Oliver sat by the window looking out at the forest, he noticed a faint, familiar glow among the trees. His heart skipped a beat, and he felt the thrill of anticipation he hadn't experienced in years. Slowly he rose, his hand instinctively reaching for the stone in his pocket. Though he was much older now, the spark of adventure and wonder still lived within him. He walked outside, stepping into the crisp night air. As he approached the edge of the forest, he felt the same chill that he had felt on that night so many years ago. But this time, he wasn't afraid. He was ready. And then, just beyond the trees, he saw her, a faint, shimmering figure, like a memory come to life. She was younger than he remembered, but her eyes held the same deep, ancient wisdom. Kayla looked at him, her gaze filled with recognition and warmth. Though her form seemed barely there, like a ghostly apparition, her presence was unmistakable. "I came to say goodbye," her voice whispered in his mind, as gentle as the autumn breeze. Oliver smiled, feeling tears in his eyes. "I never forgot, Kayla. I never will." Kayla's image softened, her form blending with the night. "Neither will I, Oliver. You gave me something I could never find on my own. You taught me what it means to be alive." And with that, her form faded, the last remnants of her light dissolving into the forest's shadows. But as Oliver stood there, he felt no sorrow. Instead, he felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that Kayla's journey had come full circle, just as his own life was nearing its end. In the days that followed, he found himself reflecting on his life with a deeper appreciation. He had lived fully, carrying the lessons Kayla had given him, and sharing them with those he loved. The stone remained with his family, a legacy passed down, its story whispered from one generation to the next. And though Kayla was gone, Oliver knew that somewhere, across time and space, their paths had intertwined in a way that transcended life and death, memory and reality. In the vastness of the universe, a piece of him would always be with her, just as a piece of her would live on in the hearts of those who carried their story forward. And that, he knew, was more than enough. As the years stretched onward, the story of Oliver and Kayla took on a life of its own. It was retold at family gatherings, on quiet nights by the fire, and during long walks in the woods. The tale was more than a legend to Oliver's descendants. It became a guiding star, a reminder that love, connection, and the search for meaning transcended the boundaries of the ordinary. The small, faded stone, now worn smooth, was passed from one generation to the next, a tangible piece of the story. Children grew up with it tucked away in a velvet pouch, feeling the cool weight of it in their palms as they listened to their parents speak of the mysterious traveler from another world, the woman who had changed their grandfather's life forever. Eventually, Oliver's great-granddaughter, Leela, a dreamer like Oliver had once been, held the stone as she stood by the old tree where it all began. She had grown up on the story, believing it in her heart, but never fully understanding its weight. Until now. She traced her fingers over the smooth stone, wondering if, somewhere, Kayla still existed, wandering through distant galaxies or living among her people, carrying her memories of Earth. Leela closed her eyes, feeling the night breeze on her face and the quiet hum of the forest around her. She remembered Oliver's words, passed down over the years, about embracing the mystery, about trusting the unknown. In that moment, she felt a strange warmth fill her heart, as if the stone itself held a memory, a flicker of Kayla's presence, a whisper of her spirit. A tear slipped down Leela's cheek, not from sadness, but from a sense of deep, ancient belonging. She opened her eyes and looked up, letting her gaze travel over the vast expanse of stars twinkling overhead. Somewhere, across that starlit sky, Oliver and Kayla's story continued, woven into the very fabric of the cosmos. And as Leela turned to walk back home, she felt as if she were never alone, as if the universe was cradling her in its embrace, a timeless witness to the connections that bind all beings together, human, alien, and everything in between. The story of Oliver and Kayla lived on, a silent song that resonated across time and space, a love letter to the endless journey of discovering what it means to truly feel, to live, and to be part of something far greater than oneself. And in that way, their legacy became immortal, their story one with the stars themselves, forever twinkling, forever remembered.